Hey, sometimes you got to do these solo. Look, our astronaut is solo. So I had Charles on here, but he's not here. So it's time to go. We're going to be talking about whether you can or can't meet unrealistic franchise sales goals. Coming up next. But imagine if you have made it this far, which is 47 seconds into this week's FRANX. The title connects with you. How to meet unrealistic franchise sales goals. I've been there. I've been in the room many times, as I'm sure you have too, where CEO or board looks up in the sky. They say, this year we want 50 deals. And you think, you're like, okay, how are we going to get to 50? And you look up in the sky and you go, all right, boss, let's go do it. On the back of your head, you think of last year. And if you've done 10 deals last year and you're going to have to do 50 this year, how are you going to make up that difference? And so I don't want to focus on the negative of this. I actually want to start with anything is possible. You just have to figure out a pathway to get there. I think in franchise development, though, oftentimes the data that we use is industry data. It's a comparison across all things. Good topic to discuss. I like that. It's across all things. So you go to a franchise conference, you go, hey, what's the average cost per deal? And the number used to be $12,000. I'm going to tell you why it skyrocketed beyond that. And that data, what that doesn't take into account is that the investment shapes that outcome, the size of the brand shapes that outcome, the depth of the leadership sets that outcome or changes that outcome, the validation changes that outcome. And so there's this scale that moves up and down based on the data of a brand, yet oftentimes we use almost industry benchmarks in the wrong way. So shame on the industry. If I bought everything in franchising, I would start organizing it based on investment level, investment type, and unit count to start. And that's not even taking in the intangibles of validation. If a franchisee is asked, would you do this again? And they hesitate or pause, that usually increases the cost per deal. And so we have to understand the data first. So if we're going to take the half full approach to CEO X said, I want 50 deals this year. Last year you did 10. You have to somehow figure out how are we going to change the pacing of this business by 5X. You got to start with what is the amount of cash that we need and capital that we need. And so let's say you look back at your data on those 10 units and you spent $150,000. So now your average cost per deal was $15,000, 150 divided by 10. And so you go back to your CEO and say, I think we can do this. And at some point, we might actually hit this process where the snowball effect happens. But we need $750,000 to do it based on $15,000 per deal. And CEO pauses and they go, no, same budget. And so now you don't have the capital. And you're like, okay, I got to figure out some other way to get to this puzzle piece. And you say, okay, our system has 50 franchisees, of which 10% are interested in buying additional units. And so you bring these 10% together, these 5 franchise owners, and you say, can you each commit to scaling 5 units over the next 5 years? And they're like, no, maybe 1 more unit. And you look at how many sold, not open, or in their portfolio. And so now maybe we found 5. So we found 5 with existing franchisees. So we go back to CEO and we go like, okay, so a good starting point. We've found 5 existing franchisees who are willing to buy another unit. That's a good starting point. And he's like, I know, but I really wanted 50 new franchisees. Now here comes another unrealistic expectation point. Like, well, what if I could find 5 franchisees who each bought 10 units? Nope, I want 50 franchisees. Well, now the cost per deal actually goes up, because if you look backwards at last year, you had 5 deals that were each 5 franchisees who signed 2-unit deals. Now actually your cost per deal is up to $30,000. And so now if the number goes to 30, now we've actually doubled it and we're going to need $1.5 million, but we're being told no cash. And so I'm playing through this route in the first 5 minutes and 22 seconds of this discussion to say the complexities create issues. But now this is where you start looking under rocks. One, existing franchisees. Let's say we can find those 5 deals. Then the rock opportunity, build more rocks, build more pebbles, is supply and demand. Fear of missing out does drive a franchisee to accelerate their interest in your business. And so you look at these 5 states, hopefully that you have franchisees that are willing to expand into, or your existing franchisees. They're saying to the buying audience, not only have I been in here, but also I like what I see. I like the return that I'm getting, and I'm going to go open up an additional unit. And so now you back in and you look at the state. Now, if you follow 1851franchise.com, I highly recommend you look up the Alec Lafer report. What we did is we looked state by state to figure out what are the top states from an economic conditions, from a happiness conditions, from a commute conditions, to figure out where are the top states. And then if you watched Coffee and Analytics, which is the Mainland 1851 podcast, then I started talking into the state-by-state data on where a franchisor was growing. And so the rocks that you're picking over there is trying to gain an insight of what states have the highest and fastest growth potential. So if you have to go find these fake 50 deals, you're trying to use data to help drive your process to say, okay, we need to get some early lift here. Here are the states we need to focus in our hyper tight budget in, because the indicators show that most likely we can have some franchise growth there as long as other aspects of our foundation are there. Another rock, and it doesn't necessarily get you deals or leads on day one, but another rock to flip over is you should look at your Google Analytics and see if there's any indicator of traffic in a state or a city that shows that people are coming to your site, just not filling out your form. And maybe that swings the way that you spend some of your digital ad spend to try to encourage them on your why you why now and push them over the edge. And so using your analytics, using state-by-state data, and then backing into how much capital you have ends up being the start of how do you solve the unrealistic franchise sales goals. Another thing that I would do is I would create a chart of franchisees, what their gross volumes are and what their profitability is. 2 reasons. One, if you have a franchise owner who has higher profitability and higher gross sales in a market, odds are they are a fan of the brand. And so if I am going to perform validation on you, I'm most likely going to do it in that state. And so if you were to break down your existing franchisees based on those data points, then that's also going to swing how do you best deploy this money the best way. I would also look at competitor brands and do 2 things with competitor brands. One, I would track openings and signings. Let's say you're a sandwich brand and you see that Jersey Mike's has opened up in Oak Park, Illinois. Well, most likely because of the size of Oak Park, Illinois, Jersey Mike's will not be opening another unit there. Therefore, they are sold out. But what happens with a brand when they have an opening or signing is they continue to gain leads, especially for 2 reasons. One, consumers get excited about the business and start saying, "Ooh, this is a franchise," and they're told, "No, you cannot open in Oak Park, Illinois. It's already sold out." And then 2, they already spent money likely to drive franchise awareness in that marketplace, so they're getting leads there. And all of these leads are being rejected, but they're raising their hand, they're interested in franchising, they're interested in a sandwich brand. And so that gives you a good indicator when you're tracking your competitors to say, let's try to spend some of our money in markets where they are not going to sell any more units to try to capture someone's attention that might be interested in buying a franchise for them to say, hey, I'm interested to talk with you. And again, we're trying to pick over rocks and find wins. Depending on your hustle in franchise lead generation, you might also look back at your funnel of the last 12 months ago and build a plan to go break bread. Meaning, if you had people that were on the edge, bring the discovery day to them. We work with a brand right now. They awarded 150-ish units in the last 12 months. What's crazy, not one discovery day in person. It's all done virtually. And it's a $1.5 million investment. I mean, it's not a cheap one. Which, side note, for those of you going to FRANX camp, we'll get into the secret of that. We actually have a session on the secrets of doing the sales model that this brand did. Anyway, so I would get on a plane and try to shake hands with people. Now we can get into content development to help you hit your unrealistic franchise sales goal. And you even doing some format like this and talking with your existing franchisees in a format like this and talk to them. What was your process of buying? What were the hurdles that you had to overcome? What made you eventually say yes to us? Are you excited about where we're going as a business? You put some of this content out into the world, LinkedIn, easy, YouTube, easy. Then now you're building a little bit of content that doesn't cost you much. It costs you time. But again, you're trying to hit these unrealistic sales goals. So you have to think creatively about this. Now you go back to the CEO. After all this, you've laid out all these game plans. Now you can go back to the CEO and you're going to say, I think we need an incentive. Now, incentives are really, really, really tricky today, especially if you're a business that uses the broker networks because the commissions have gotten out of control. But if you have some sort of incentive, it might create some sort of buzz moment that can get a prospect or candidate excited about moving forward. If you put an expiration date on that opportunity, on that incentive, then you're also creating another opportunity for supply and demand challenges. And so CEO goes, okay, that cost me nothing. Now, if we're going to hit these unrealistic sales goals, I want to pause and move into using another resource to get the deals done. And that would be the broker networks. What the broker networks have done is a tremendous job of building relationships with the franchise buyer that when you say to them, what are you interested in buying? They say, I don't know. Now, this is a very, very, very valuable franchise lead back to the franchise broker because the franchise broker can look at the totality of the portfolio of brands that they can offer. And they say, based on the amount of money that you have, ding, here are the brands that I can drive your way. And ultimately, they're going to take someone who's raised their hand and said they're interested in franchise, and they're going to get them to the brand that makes most sense. Now, the negative, obviously, on using a broker network is you're going to pay extreme commissions in exchange for that deal. But if it goes back to this fake scenario, if the CEO said, no, there's no more budget, it actually opens up a whole nother additional budget. So let's say your franchise fee is $50,000 for easy math. And of these 50 deals, half are going to come through the broker network. That's $1.25 million in commissions that you're going to pay out. But it's $1.25 million that you did not have to access from your CEO. You're just incentivizing the brokers based on giving them 100% of your franchise fee. Now, if I'm talking integrity and honesty and doing the right thing, if in the original stage CEO X was unwilling to give you more budget, then there might be capital issues internal to your business. So you actually really need those franchise fees to make the franchisee successful. I love the broker network for brands that are capitalized, for brands that need to keep the lights on. It is not the right fit for you because your number one job is making franchisees successful. When you get an opportunity to make a franchisee successful, you have to do it. Because if you do so, the money that you start getting off of royalty will start building your business. And so that's now 14 minutes and 30 seconds of me talking about this. And I've made this super complex. But the ultimate statement is this. If you're facing unrealistic franchise sales goals, you're going to have to think outside the box. It's not going to be the franchise portals that are going to solve your issues. It's not looking up and praying to the franchise gods. That's not going to work either. If the viability of your business sucks, you are at a huge disadvantage too, which in the most simplistic way, how much are they going to make in year one? When does the cash stop bleeding? Are they going to be able to scale with your franchise brand? Is the product sound? Is the marketing plan good? Is the operations really, really robust? And oftentimes, all that stuff, which is not your responsibility in the org chart in franchise sales, all of that stuff has to be working in order for you to meet your unrealistic franchise sales goals. And oftentimes, if you in franchise sales raise your hand and say, we could tighten up our operations a little bit, you're like, scolded. Go back to your seat. Go do your job. And I think this is one of the challenges of franchising. You can think of a car, a bicycle, a human being. You strip out part of the process of how a human being walks, how a bicycle rides, how a car operates, and then it won't work. And the same is true for a franchise brand. Like, all of the pieces have to work together cohesively in order for you to reach these unrealistic sales goals. Finally, the last final statement is this. I like goals. I don't think goals are a bad thing to have. But we're trying to convince someone to invest their life savings into a business they have little to no control over. That's complex. And so we can put out numbers, we can build back budgets based on these numbers. But once you've built up some buzz in the marketplace, if leads aren't converting to applications and applications aren't converting to deals, it probably isn't your sales team's fault. It's bigger than that. And that means there's something broken about the business, that in that sales process, most likely in that sales process, something is turning off the candidate, because you got to understand the candidate is already super afraid. They're about to invest a lot of money into this business. They're going to most likely make a career change that is dramatic. And so if you give any reason to spook them along the way, they are going to take that as an opportunity to turn around. Entrepreneurs or founders, let's call it founders. Founders are a little bit crazier. Like, they're missing some of their marbles. When we miss some of your marbles, you can't see the danger. You're like, I'll figure that. And you just continue to figure out. You're a puzzle solver. For a franchisee, though, they're afraid. And so, yeah, a salesperson has to be able to make the candidate feel comfortable in the process, has to develop them as a franchise buyer. But a franchise development professional cannot, if they're not in charge of it, they cannot fix fundamental business challenges, cash flow, operations, marketing, training, vision, and leadership, unless you've given them the autonomy to do that or the voice to do that. And so when you're holding them accountable to sell something that is not sellable, or not sellable at the 50 unit count, and you can't look backwards at deal value and see, man, 10 more deals actually drives up our revenues pretty nicely, then you're pretty much set to lose. Now I've spun it half empty. When the glass has turned half empty and believability is decreasing and culture is decreasing and these levels are starting to go down, that's typically where a franchise brand stalls out. And when a franchise brand stalls out, and I've been there, I watched this happen within the last month. We built a whole model. Brand was like this, great leadership, good team, great community culture. New CEO comes in, complete dickhead, doesn't know anything about franchise development, changes, cuts, continues to rise expectations, looks around the room and says, it's your fault, and it's your fault, not mine. And what that does is it buys that CEO another day in that seat to collect their paycheck and destroy that brand. And I've watched it happen. It's the one that's in my head right now. It's not the only time this has happened. And so shame on people who blame people as the reason why, without looking in the mirror and saying, let's fundamentally fix the business model versus doing something different, which is blaming everybody else. Simon says you need more leads to get more franchise sales. Fewer leads of the right franchisee profile will lead to increased franchise sales. Won't it? Won't it? I like won't it as an end to a sentence. Yeah. The number of leads it takes to get a deal is 1. I don't know what world we decided we needed to live in where we chased leads. Who in the world would want to talk to 100 people to get 1 deal? And that's the industry number. That's garbage. Give me 10. Give me 10 people who are qualified. Right now in our business, I would say we at our company, we get somewhere in the range of 10 leads a month. They are all qualified and ready to buy, or ready to buy, not yet qualified, but ready to listen. I can do 10 sales calls a month. I can do 20. I can't do 100. I got other things to do. So yeah, fewer leads. More leads doesn't mean more deals. A lot of CEOs, that's a great point, Simon. A lot of CEOs go into that board meeting and like, where are my leads? I was in one yesterday. They go, but our lead momentum is shifting. I was like, no, it isn't. It's actually climbing. Look at the indicators. Your return visitors to your site is going like this. Those are going to convert. 6.4 months. 6.4 months. I'm going to get that tattooed on me. 6.4 months right on my neck. Like a gangster tattoo. Well, that's it. How to meet unrealistic franchise sales goals. Lift over rocks. Be honest and truthful. Don't back down. Don't be a yes man or yes person or yes woman. Take that creativity and hustle. So hustle, creativity, and speak up. That's my answer. And that's, I mean, look, if Charles was here, I would have probably talked just as much because that's what I tend to do. But that's it. That's FRANX this week. Want to help? If you need help meeting your unrealistic franchise sales goals, reach out to me. Advice is free. And then I charge you commissions just like everyone else. Just kidding. It's FRANX. See ya.